Hello everyone, in today's video, I'm going to spend a day trading gold. In fact, there were days before when I wanted to record a day where I just observe and trade gold. However, the market didn't have any entry points that fit my entry rules. I will point out the entire process, how I choose the entry timing for gold, or tips to observe and identify the stages of gold. Of course, you can apply the same process to any other product you are interested in. Not to keep everyone waiting long, we will start right away. I just entered a gold order at this stage, and now I will share the reason why I decided to. First is the decision of why today I decided to watch and monitor only to enter gold orders. The second is, what is the reason that I entered the gold order at this time? Here is the 5-minute time frame, and on this chart, we can see that a fairly strong upward wave appears here. Now I will go into larger time frames, the 15-minute and 1-hour time frames, so we can observe the overall picture more clearly. This is the 15-minute frame, and we can see that previously it had a downward structure. However, at this stage, an upward structure appeared, and especially this upward wave is quite strong. It broke through the previous peak. Actually, if we look at the H1 time frame, the picture will be much clearer. This is the H1 picture. We can see that although the previous trend was decreasing on the H1 frame, but at this time, a fairly strong upward wave appeared. It broke through this old peak area. And we can see that in the stages near this upward wave is showing a fairly strong force, stronger than the previous downward waves. We can see these previous downward waves, they are quite weak. Many wicks, and they didn't decrease strongly. No long candles like this appeared. Here, these waves. And even, for example, at this stage, we also see an upward wave. But this upward wave hasn't broken through this area yet. Regarding the amplitude, it's only equal to this downward wave. It almost hasn't broken through this area. Especially before this, its upward force was still weaker than this downward wave. We can look back a little at the past. Here, in the downtrend, the downward waves are still quite clearly dominant. And these upward waves almost cannot overcome the previous downward waves. Here, even this upward structure. Although it's an upward structure, higher lows, higher highs, but it is still within this previous downward wave. And we see here, for example here. I will zoom out the chart a bit here. For example, the previous uptrend, then these downward waves were all followed by a stronger upward wave. That's the signal that the upward force is still dominant. Although it has downward segments, after that stronger upward waves always appeared. Here, this downward segment and stronger upward waves appeared. And until we see this downward wave, it breaks slightly through the previous upward wave. Then the upward force had gradually weakened, and even this segment, it decreased, but then the upward wave still broke up. Here, downward wave here, the upward wave still broke up. Then after that, we see the upward force continues to push up. However, this upward force after pushing up was pushed down and broken by a downward force. Meaning, this downward force is stronger than this upward force. Usually, when such cases appear, a sideways phase will take place, and then a wave continues that downward force. Here, for example, this upward phase, we see a downward wave, then an upward wave breaks through the previous one. And there appears a struggle phase between the two sides, which is this sideways phase. And here is the wave continuing the previous upward force. Here too, we have a downward wave, stronger than the upward wave. And here is the continuing wave. Here, we see in this upward structure, it's the same. It has downward phases, then an upward wave breaks up. And then is a continuing wave. In this segment, downward force, upward force, breaks up. Then a sideways phase, and to the continuing phase. That's why, in this case as well, we see downward force, then an upward wave, meaning the force of the buyers is attacking. So that's the reason why I expect it can go sideways or even decrease. Then it will continue to increase further. I will enlarge this chart a bit. And as we mentioned this wave earlier, we might wonder why in this upward wave, what characteristics does it have that we won't look for a buy order compared to this upward wave? Then I also emphasize again that this upward wave, compared to the previous downward waves, it is still quite weak. And although we also see that when this upward wave appears, the continuation phase occurs, but because it is weaker, this continuation phase is also weak. The selling force is strong, and then it only increases a little bit, and the selling force has pushed it down. Even if we look at the previous stages, it's the same. Here, this stage, although it has an upward structure, but the upward forces, compared to the previous downward force, are almost clearly weaker. So we also do not enter a buy. And when you apply this, then practice looking at the chart, you will feel it. And it will also explain why, with the same upward wave, I decided to look for a buy in this wave and not in other upward waves. Another thing you need to note is that this is the H1 frame, and I am trading on the M5 frame, meaning I set the stop loss according to the M5 frame. That's because here, there is an upward wave breaking through the previous selling area, and compared to the downward waves, it is getting stronger. So I expect there will be further upward momentum, and clearly, I don't expect the further upward momentum to completely change the trend, because the previous trend is still decreasing. But for the further upward momentum, I only expect it to increase enough for me to reach a certain R number. For example, if it increases to here, just increasing to here is enough for 2R, so I exit. And after that, if it goes down further, it's okay, because if considering the overall large trend, it is still decreasing, the downward force is still dominant. For example, in this stage, if there is an upward wave, then we have a continuation stage here. And if in this stage, it has an entry point and stop loss according to M5, for example, then if it goes up to this peak area, it still reaches an R ratio of about 2R. Then like that, we can still enter a buy order in a downtrend. However, the reason for not buying in this order, as I said earlier, the upward force, compared to the previous downward waves, is significantly weaker. So usually, the continuation stage will not be able to increase much either.